Hello everyone, and I hope you enjoyed the Mafia romance readathon. Since obviously you won't get this vlog until it is over, I hope you had a great time participating and that you've read a lot of new Mafia. Maybe you read Mafia for the first time, and I'm just so happy that you chose to join us or that you're choosing to watch this video, and maybe we'll be convinced to read some. So I'm gonna change position a little because I'm not going to turn on my ring light yet today. I barely put makeup on. I knew that I would be filming a lot of clips today, and I might do some live reading sprints later, so I went ahead and did it, but otherwise wasn't planning on it. Anyway, this is the second annual Mafia romance readathon, and boy oh boy, has there been a lot of excitement for it this time around, even more so, especially from so many people who tried it for the first time last year, and that just warms my heart so much that people have tried it, because I really do believe two things. One, if you love historical romance and you like it a little bit darker, and you like arranged marriages, and you like class differences, and you like it sexy, Mafia is a wonderful bridge over, well, not a bridge, it's a wonderful hop to take, because there's so many themes from historical that you will find in Mafia. Yeah, it's usually a lot bloodier. Yeah, it's a little bit sexier. Things sometimes get a bit kinkier. But if you're looking to try something new, I feel like this is a great place to do it. So my hosts for this are listed down below. You've probably have followed them already if you're participating. We have some fun things planned for this weekend. I made it a day longer than I did last year, and you know what? I'm glad I ended up doing that, because when I started planning the Mafia readathon, I did not know that I was going to be a work from home kind of gal, working on my being full-time at YouTube now. So I'm very glad that I chose to do that, because it's worked out well for me as of now. Oh, the odds are coming. So let's quickly go over what my TBR is for this. This may be a changing thing because I have a couple of things going on that may change it up. One of them being that Juliette Cross is releasing Always Practice Safe Hex early, and our arcs are getting dropped for that today, and I don't have to rush into reading it, but I really want to read it, so we're gonna see. And also, being the creator slash host of the readathon, it's not like I'm doing it for prizes or anything. The prize is having so many new people reading Mafia and falling for new authors. But I want to read that. I also, thankfully these are actually part of Mafia, but I recently opened my Patreon, which you could find out more about that down below if you'd like. But one of the tiers in my Patreon is that I am going to be annotating books for a certain number of people. I only have very, very limited slots, and I'm glad that I did that, because y'all would have just jumped into that tier and I would be drowning. So I'm really glad that I limited that. But my top tier patrons who are paying for an annotated book, 3 of them picked Mafia books that they want annotated, which is great. And so 2 of the books that I get to annotate are Brutal Vows and Brutal Prince. And I may do my reread of at least one of them during this readathon. Since I do have an audiobook for Brutal Prince, I also haven't reread Brutal Prince since the very first time I read it. I've reread almost every book of Sophie Lark's except for this one and Bloody Heart. So very excited to reread this and put my thoughts into it. So those are going to be some like bonus TBR books. But the books that I picked for my TBR, what I did is I took every Mafia book in my Kindle library and I put them on pieces of paper along with whatever prompts that they'll cover, and I put them in this TBR jar. This is a TBR jar I got off of Etsy. I don't remember the shop that I got it from, but she only had a couple of them, and I just thought it was so cute to use for like readathons for drawing names out. So I put all those in there, and I picked the first 5 out, and I picked 5 books that will technically cover all of my bingo board. Again, I'm not playing for prizes because I'm giving away prizes for this, but I still wanted to do a bingo board. So I picked 5 books out, and so I'll tell you what those are and what prompts that they pick. I actually have them right here. So I picked Darker Than Love by Anna Zaires, and that one is the oldest book in my library, and it's also Bratva. Then I picked Vicious Prince by Lili St. Germain, which is a captor captive. Royalty is in the title, and it is Sicilian, which is Cosa Nostra. This one is also a new to me author too, but I didn't have to double that up for everything. Then I have Mad Mafia Love by Camilla Jasper. Like, I don't know anything about most of these either because I just would grab books for free that were Mafia. So this one says it's Italian. I don't know if it covers any other ones. Then there is Keep by Kaye Blue. And so this one is a tattooed hero. This one's Bratva. This is one that I put for new to me author. Again, a lot of these are. And then Dark Lessons by Julia Sykes. This one is a next in series and an outsider to the Mafia. And I've actually have read a couple books in this series. So those are the books that I picked. And so here's what my board looks like. So it looks a little boring right now because I'm going to be like coloring it in as I do it. Because I am a mood reader, you know, I don't like to lock myself down too much. So I did everything in pencil, and as I do them for sure, I'll put them in solid color. Does that make sense? So this is in my board. So this is my Mafia bingo board, and these are the prompts that I'm like kind of choosing from. And so you can see, I'll tell you which book I started in just a second so you know. But these were the ones in pencil that I'm hoping to do, and then as I pick the book and I'm reading it, like I made it solid. So then these were the 5 books that I drew. Again, I put them in pencil just in case, and as I finish them, I will fill it in and like put what my rating is and stuff like that. So then my plan is, if and when I read those 5, which potentially I could do pretty quickly. I mean, it just depends. Some of these books aren't very long. Some of them are really long. So it just depends. Maybe I'll read one of these, and a lot of these are like in a series. Maybe I'll want to binge all of those. So I'm giving myself a lot of leeway because I want this to be an enjoyable time for myself. And like I said, I may take a break and read Always Practice Safe Hex just to, you know, keep me from getting burned out. And then when the Mafia Romance Readathon ends, we're going right into the Historical Romance Readathon, which is a week-long readathon next week. And I'm glad that it's for a week because I'm going to be going to visit my sister Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So I'll bring some historical with me, but I also, because I get to work for myself, I want to make sure that I'm going to visit my family while I can, you know? Okay, so a lot of intro. What I'm reading first. So I did make a spinner wheel, which if I remember to, I'll put the clip in of the spinner wheel. If I don't, it's okay. I spun the wheel and I got Darker Than Love by Anna Zaires. So this book connects with her other Mafia books she has. So the Twist Me trilogy, there's another couple trilogies too that they all have to do around Julian. I cannot pronounce his name, but Twist Me was one of my first captor captives with like non-consent in it. I never read one before, and Anna Zaires is a very interesting place to start if you're starting with that. Let me tell you the truth with that. So very excited. But I haven't read her in years, but I have had this book on so many TBRs for so many, like years, literally years. It was on my TBR, I think, for the Kindle Clear Out Readathon before. I think I had it on my Mafia Readathon maybe last year, and I just never would make myself read it, and I don't know why. I know a lot of people love this. It just didn't happen for me. I just didn't do it. But now I've already started it, and I am on part 3 of the book. So the way that this one that I have is broken up is that it actually, there's a novella also. Sorry, the light's coming in now. Where if you read that one first, you could jump to part 3 of the book, but parts 1 and 2 are what's in the novella. So this is actually about, our heroine is kind of sort of like a spy slash, like, she has like killed before. She actually was going to be like, she was in the military, I think even, or was like trained to be, like, there's just a lot about this heroine. And she is undercover as a waitress, and she accidentally overhears something that she shouldn't. And so these twin brothers, Ilya and Jan, they kidnap her, and she kind of plays dumb about it. And so she actually has a one-night stand with Jan because he wants to sleep with her, and he does. And then she escapes. And now it is a little over a year later, and because of who she works for, she actually gets captured by Ilya and Jan again. Well, it gets captured by Julian's men, and then they're supposed to torture this woman to find out info, and Ilya and Jan are like, oh my god, that is Mina. She's this person. So they're supposed to get information from her and all that jazz, and meanwhile, like, Jan feels very betrayed that he thinks she was some mastermind, and really it was their two, like, jobs just crossed each other. But it seems extremely suspicious that this spy slash, you know, her working for these different, like, she does freelance work. When she gets caught, it's very suspicious that she wasn't playing them before, you know, and Jan doesn't really believe that. So anyway, that was a very long intro clip. I foresee this vlog being a very long one because you all know I'm not good at shutting my trap too quickly. So anyway, I'm going to go about reading that, and we'll see when I check in with you next. Well, hey, it is the evening, and the lighting is starting to go down, but I figured I'd film a clip because I finished 2 books, and now I'm deviating from the readathon just a little bit, so I thought I'd update before I do that. It's still only the first day, so I don't feel bad about this deviation, especially once I tell you what it is. But I finished Darker Than Love, and I gave that 2 stars. So I hated it. I hated it. I probably should have given it 1 star, but I didn't because I am a softie. And not that it really matters, but I just don't like how this author writes her possessive heroes anymore. As I think I said in the first clip, when I first read Zaires, she was one of my very first, like, dark romance, and I do believe she was my first captive that was in a dark setting. Like, I'm pretty sure I've read some fantasy before that had captive, but not in the same, like, sexual tone, right? Like, I haven't been reading that type of romance for a super long time. But this story, the hero is just so mean. And I know that that's a weird word to use when we're talking about Mafia, but I think that it was explained best by JT Geisinger when she was on my channel. Listen to me name drop. She was on my channel for an interview back in March, and she explained that she writes possessive heroes and very, you know, like, they're obnoxious in some ways. Some of her heroes are kidnappers. It happens. But they're never cruel or mean to their women. They may not get along, they may tease them, they may even call them some names, like my queen. But they aren't cruel in the same way. And the hero in this one, well, I wouldn't call him a hero. Mafias don't generally have heroes. Anyway, they're anti-heroes, I know that. The heroine was just doing her job, and she does get caught, and they are trying to figure out what information she knows, and she is being, like, punished for that. But he's, like, deliberately cruel to her, as well as super overly possessive in a way that's disgusting. And I remember Julian being like this. In fact, Julian from Twist Me does pop up into this. We don't like see him much at all. But even once the hero has like made a choice to like keep her, he's still super possessive. He threatens her loved ones, her loved one being her grandmother, who she at one point sneaks away to see because her grandmother, she hasn't seen her in so long, and now she's been being kept captive, and she's decided to, you know, be with our hero and not like get away from him. He also has implanted a tracker in the back of her neck, so she knows she can't like escape him, but she needs to see her grandmother so her grandmother won't worry about her. And when he gets her back, which she's literally on her way back to him when he catches her, because of course she is, he threatens her grandmother that if she ever does something like that again, he'll kill her grandmother. And I literally lost all like connection to him, even though he's struggling with the fact that he has more than just like lustful feelings for her. He's very possessive of her. We already know that he feels more for her than just a fuck. Like, we know this. But to threaten her grandmother when she's been nothing but like cooperative this whole time and let him fuck her anytime he wanted to, I just get sick of like lust being enough in the relationship. Because anytime he's angry, anytime he's punishing her, she's instantly wet whenever he is being mean to her. So much so that at a certain point, and this has happened in other books, this is not solely a thing in this one, to the point that I could no longer stomach the sex scenes because they all would start from this like twisted place, you know? And then there would be these sweet moments afterwards where he's holding her and he's like, I can't believe the feelings that I have for her. And I'd be like, you're a fucking pig. You're a pig. I don't like you at all. You're disgusting. I don't like you. So I skimmed the last 150 pages. Also, this book was 500 plus pages. So once I got to the point where I was no longer like, I mean, I couldn't enjoy the sex scenes because he's disgusting. Like, you don't threaten someone's grandma because she wants to visit her grandma. If you're that much of an insecure fucker, bye. Like, bye. So I'm getting too heated about this. I know a lot of people were excited for me to read this, so I don't usually, but I'm sorry. When you threaten a grandma, I'm like, I'm done. Like, I'm done. You can even threaten people's parents or like their ex-boyfriend. That's stuff that Julian has like done. And it didn't bother me the same way as she just wanted to sneak out to visit her grandma so her grandmother wouldn't worry about her. She has otherwise complied with every demand, let him fuck her whenever she wanted to. And then he threatened her grandma and I was done. So anyway, gave that one 2 stars, moved along. Then I listened to Vicious Prince, which hit my prompts for royalty in the title, and I thought that this one would also hit Cosa Nostra and Captor Captive based on what the blurb said, because it mentioned them like being enemies and her like waking up after being kidnapped like to his face, like wake up to his face. So I thought this was a Captor Captive. It turns out this book is a captive book. And if you are a fan and or were emotionally devastated by still beating, this book may be for you. So I listened to the audio for this. It was a pretty short one. Unfortunately, the other 2 books in the series aren't on audio, but they are out. All 3 books in this trilogy are out. Actually the 3rd one like just came out, so that's exciting for me. There was a big cliffhanger at the end of this one. I'll explain it more in a sec, sorry. And I am going to continue the series, so I want to say that. I'm going to continue with the books like on my TBR for the readathon, but I will very soon be picking up the next one because I was super nervous at the start of this book. So this is supposed to be a Romeo and Juliet, like reimagined. It used to be called like The Lovers of Verona even or something. And so I thought this was going to be Cosa Nostra, Sicilian Mafia. But I actually don't think it's that either. We'll have to see what other parts of like the crime families come in later on, because we actually didn't get too much of that in this one, because our heroine, she is getting engaged to this man that her dad is going to make her marry. She doesn't want to do it. She actually has a boyfriend. His name is Will. And they've been together since she was a older teenager, like 17, they've been together, and she's always hoped that they would be able to be together, even though she knew it probably wasn't going to happen. She's engaged to this 40-year-old man now, officially. And we have a very passionate sex scene with her current boyfriend. Nothing really seems wrong with him, except he's very angry that she's breaking up with him. Like, he's very upset about it. But still, like, there's no indication, like, in their sex scene that it's anything other than, like, they just, like, really rough sex and it's hot between them. You know, like, that's there. And then she goes to this engagement party, and the first thing that happens is that Will does, like, break in and is trying to run away with her. And she's like, dude, we would not get away. And even though I love you, like, they'd kill you. And then I'd end up engaged to this person anyway. And it like, wouldn't work because she knows what her family's like. So, got it. Then something happens where her father gets shot. And so her fiance, who, he seems like kind of a tool. But actually, like, the way that he was, like, set up, I was like, you know, it would have been an interesting romance if she actually, like, was with this older guy, but it's not. And then she wakes up tied to a bed, or tied to a chair. A man in a mask strips her down, starts sexually arousing her against her will, and it's being filmed. He cuts her and uses her blood to write on her chest, and he seems to be a serial killer, we know. So, or not we know, but we've heard of. So again, if you've read Still Beating, you might be seeing certain similarities in this. There's definitely, like, you know, there are parts of it that seem similar, but even more so when her enemy, who used to be someone that she liked when she was young, because their families, like, she would have probably married him, but then there was a break between their families, and they literally are called the Capulets and the Montagues. I'm talking way too much about this. I'm sorry. And we've had his point of view. So his name is Rome and her name is Avery, but they're supposed to be Romeo and Juliet. And he's a drug dealer. And so y'all know, well, maybe you don't know, drug use is a big trigger for me. And the first time we meet Rome, so we've learned what's happening with Avery, and we meet Rome, and he's in the middle of a drug-fueled sex binge with Rosaline, literally to the point where, like, his penis is chapped, he says, because him and her have been fucking like bunnies for a few days. So I was like, oh my God, I don't want to read about this. But that quickly moves along. Rosaline has actually been stealing drugs from him, so she's in trouble. And then, you know, we get back around to what's happening where Avery is being, like, assaulted by this man in a mask. And the next time she wakes up, Rome is there. And she thinks Rome is the one who was assaulting her. But he also had just woke up. And again, this is like Still Beating in the setup. So Rome and Avery are kidnapped together. And there's a cliffhanger to this book. There's also a rape in here, not by the hero, but it is a very visceral, prolonged assault that happens to Avery. So just want to put that out there. And again, if you've read Still Beating or you've heard about what happens in that book, I would say that at this point, it's a lesser amount of that, but it's still, like, it's a lot happening. So use caution. And there's a cliffhanger to this one. So yeah, I gave this 4 stars. I'm super intrigued. I hate saying, like, wow, I really like that after I just explained what happens in it. But it was fascinating. So anyway, this vlog is going to be so freaking long. So yeah, so like I said, I'm now going to take a break from that. Because I've already read 2 of my 5 books, and I just got my ARC for Always Practice Safe Hex from Juliette Cross, who's one of my besties. And I knew that I was going to be getting this soon. And so since I've already finished 2 books and it's the first day, I'm going to go ahead and read Safe Hex. I'm hoping that I'll get through the whole thing tonight or between tonight and tomorrow morning. Then I may do my free read of Brutal Prince. I have the audiobook queued up and I'm going to be annotating this for one of my patrons. Very excited that she picked Brutal Prince. It's going to be awesome. And then I still have some books that are on my actual TBR. which I will get to those in due time. So this clip was already way too long, so I'm going to stop it now and dive back into my sexy, grim, and witch book that I'm reading. So, hi. So it's Saturday afternoon now, and I was a bit naughty and didn't update this yesterday. Part of the reason is that, so I think I mentioned in the last clip that I was going to pause the readathon just for a little bit because I got Always Practice Safe Hex. I got an arc of this book from Juliette, and I was going to read it immediately. I wanted to. And that's what I did Thursday night into Friday. And so I had some errands to do in the morning, and then I was reading Safe Hex while I had to get my oil changed, and then when I got home I finished it. And I cried for the last 20% of the book with joy, I promise. I adore that book, loved it. And so I was gonna film a clip about what I was reading next yesterday, and literally my face was a mess. And I know you guys don't judge me, but I was just like, whatever. I didn't have too much to say about the book that I finished yesterday because I did read Keep by Kaye, and this was novella length. It's a Romanian Mob Chronicles is the series name. It was a book that I got for free. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have grabbed this one. It is it's an interracial romance. This woman who has been taken as a domestic slave basically by this complete jackass gets rescued by a Romanian mob boss, and he will set her free or let her live with him. It's up to her, and she chooses to stay with him, and then they basically are together without really talking about it or having a conversation. They're just together. So the book wasn't bad, but it really wasn't romantic. And yeah, it was 180 pages and they were together. So I didn't have a lot to say about it. But when I spun my wheel again, because I've been using a spinner wheel for this, I added some more books in because I'd read 3 of the 5 that were on my TBR, and I wasn't super pumped about the other 2 that are on my list. So I went ahead and added 5 more books. I pulled a couple more out of my magic jar that I have. Plus, I had just gotten this as a gift. So a bunch of my friends for the readathon are reading this series. Sorry, it's going to be shiny because the window's open. By Michelle Hurd. I'd read a book by Michelle Hurd that was part of the Underworld Kings, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. It was called Tears of Salvation. And this series is ongoing. Only the first 2 books are out, and there's going to be 7. And it's going to be called well, I think it's called the Taken series, but there is this group called the Priesthood in it that is yeah, it's going to be called the Sinner series. And there's this priesthood, which is a gathering of Mafia dons that was, in effect, a convocation of the nation's priesthood of organized crime. So there's all these men that are the different heads of the different branches of the Mafia or whatever. This is Canadian, too. So that's interesting. Or at least this one takes place in Vancouver. And I've been seeing everyone read this. It's a stepbrother romance, kind of. He's, 36 and she's 21. It says literally on, yeah, it says on the front page. But anyway, people were really loving it. And so I had put it on my wish list, and my lovely channel member Desiree, she sent it to me. So I put it on my spinner wheel and it got picked. So this is what I'm reading right now. I'm already a third of the way into it. As you can tell, I'm reading it and there's not a ton of words on each page. So it makes you feel very accomplished when you're just plowing through it. So yeah, it's an interesting setup. I'm really not liking Nicholas so far, but I hear from everyone that these heroes, or so far the 2 heroes we met, they start out as kind of jackass and then they fall really hard for the heroine, which I can vibe with that. He's very frustrating in the beginning, but our heroine Tess, her mother has just married a retired godfather who is 72. And Nicholas is the son who is now running the Mafia since his father retired. And so he is now her stepbrother, and in the eyes of the Mafia, she's now his, you know, younger sister that he needs to marry off to someone. So literally, she's finding out that her plans for her future to be a director or like someone who is creating like films and like short films and art that way, that she is going to lose all of that because he's going to arrange a marriage and get her off of his hands and do that. And he immediately is like, don't disrespect me, don't mess with me, I will make your life hell if you don't do what I want. And he just continually is like intimidating her. But she's like, she's scared of him, so like she's trying to listen, but he's being so outrageous about stuff that she will fight him, and he's starting to get very turned on every time she fights him. So where I'm at, like I said, I'm like a third of the way in. They just had their first kiss, where it's one of those where like I get so frustrated by this thing where like she's supposed to, you know, come to these events with the family and look pretty, and he's gonna find a husband for her. And so his sister takes her to get a dress, and so she gets an outfit and she goes to the party, and then he thinks her dress is too sexy, even though his sister's the one who dressed her for it. So he's like super pissed, and he pulls her into a room, and then he ends up kissing her, and she's like, what the fuck? So yeah, so it's a stepbrother, but like it's literally, she'd never met him but like until a week before they got married. And her mother and her new stepdad are, you know, on their honeymoon, and she basically is like under this guy's control. So I'm going to see how much of this I can get through today. And then I really want to start annotating one of my patron books, and 3 of which are Mafia choices. So I really want to dive into that. And I only have technically like one more prompt on my board. But again, I don't really have to fill my prompt board out because this is my readathon and I'm not going to be winning the prizes anyway. I'm going to be giving them to y'all. So I just want to have a good time, and I'm hoping this book is 5 stars. A lot of people were giving it 5 stars. We'll see how Nicholas like grovel. Like he needs to grovel to her a little bit. He's a complete jackass. So we'll see how that works out. But the first like 3 books I read for this, I haven't really loved them. Like at all. Like I'm not connecting with the books at all. So rereading Brutal Vows or Brutal Prince would make me happy. So anyway, there's a check-in. I'll probably only do one more check-in because this vlog will already be, you know, 40 minutes long, which will be fine. But I'll tell you what I ended up finishing reading. But I did add another, like we did reading sprints last night on Peace Love Books channel. And I was wanting to do a reading sprint, but I didn't want to commit to a day because I didn't know what would be happening. But I got all my filming done this morning and editing and all of that up. So I decided to do reading sprints. So we're going to do reading sprints on my channel this afternoon. So I'm actually going to try to finish this before the reading sprint. And then for the reading sprints, I want to be like annotating one of those books. So we'll see. But anyway, we'll check in tomorrow to wrap this up. Hey, well, I thought I would wrap this up real quick. I have some food coming, and I'm done with all the reads I'm going to read for the readathon, so I figured it was time to wrap this up real quick. Just as the sun. I have the ring light on because the sun wasn't bright enough. Now the sun's being bright. But anyway, I can't remember how deeply I talked about what I was reading in the last clip. I believe I was talking about Taken by a Sinner and how that one didn't quite work for me because it just was way too quickly we were banging each other, and then way too quickly we were just like the emotions were just very highly like jumping back and forth, so it wasn't totally working for me. But a lot of my friends who had read both of the books out in this series so far, which I believe there's going to be 5, there's going to be 5 or 6 in the Sinner series, let me look, 5 of them, about each of the different Mafia lords who are part of the priesthood, which is what it's called. And this book just didn't really work for me, but I didn't hate it, and I understood why it was working for people, because there's plenty of books that I love that other people are just like, okay, I don't understand you, you know? So here's what happened. It was a surprise. So I did do my reread of Brutal Prince. my food is going to be here in just a minute. There was a warning, so might have to run in a second. I did my reread of Brutal Prince. I listened to the audiobook while I was annotating this for one of my patrons who is at my top tier level. So I had so much fun writing in this for her and rereading it. And when I originally read this, I gave it 4 stars. I didn't have problems with it, but it just seemed really wacky for me compared to a lot of like other Mafia that I had read. Okay, awkward cut there. Literally, people get lost on the way to my apartment with food all the time, and it's so frustrating because some people like know the area and they know like this is where a buzzer at the house would be, and other people, they literally will go to either end of the apartment and then still not know how to hear it. Anyway, side note, whatever, back to what we were doing. So this was a extremely delightful experience. I gave this one 5 stars this time. I'm so glad I reread it, and I can't wait to continue doing these annotated copies for my patrons. As I've said, like, the tier that involves annotating books is a tier that's been like a dream for me to have, and I will hopefully, once I'm a better like manager of my time and really get rolling, be able to offer a few more slots for people to have books annotated. But anyway, this was wonderful, so I slipped this one in, and then I decided I had room for one more read last night. And I knew that if I didn't continue the Sinner series right now with the encouragement of my friends, that I probably would put it off and not get back to it. So I went ahead and picked up Owned by the Sinner, which is the next one. And in not just my opinion, but in the way that the author set it up, even though these books look extremely connected to each other, you can start with either one. You absolutely can, because the same way that the first one connects to this one, that, you know, this one connects to that, and this priesthood of mafia bosses, like, each book takes place in a different city. Like, the first one takes place in Canada, in like Vancouver, and this one takes place in Chicago, and this one's Irish Mafia, where the first one was Greek Mafia. This one is an age gap, like, office romance. Our heroine is also secretly like a mafia princess and doesn't know it, because her father is an enforcer for the mafia, and we see at the beginning of the book, actually, we get a scene from his POV where he is deciding to keep that separate from his daughter so that she doesn't get drawn into mafia life. Well, now she's 24, and she ends up as a receptionist for Byrne Industries, which is a construction company that is a legitimate business run by the mob. And Liam, who is 39, and he's like a germaphobe and like OCD kind of. He doesn't like to be touched. He prepares all of his own food. He likes things to be very neat and clean, to the point like that he feels physically ill if someone touches him, or he eats food that he didn't make with his own 2 hands. Like, he has serious issues with it. Anyway, he also has a stepbrother who is a complete jackass and a disgusting human being, but who his father has kind of like forced him to give a position in his business. But Liam refuses to give him a role in the mafia because he knows that he would turn things really badly. This is a mafia that does not deal in the flesh trade, as it was called. I obviously very much appreciate when the mafia will actively like fight against that. That's not how it would be in real life, but these are fantasy mafia men, and I want them to have that line that they won't cross. But Finn, this asshole stepbrother, wants that to be a part of their business. Now, the only real carryover from the first book is that our priesthood is having some issues with the Sicilians, and in the first book, Nicholas and his family, they're dealing with the Sicilians attacking them, and in this book, the Sicilians are also kind of an issue, but we don't even know like specific Sicilians' names, so again, you don't need to, but keep going. So our heroine, she becomes a receptionist here when Liam happens to be away, like on vacation. And so Finn is actually there working. He sets his sights on her and he starts making the moves on her. And when she rejects him, he gets ugly. So the major trigger warnings, there's 2 major trigger warnings for this book, and they are sexual assault and death of a parent. So both of those were pretty visceral in here. This one was actually a very long, like, slow burn though, which I feel like was appropriate for the story we were telling. Liam completely falls head over heels, and he's so sweet and awkward because intimacy is completely new to him. Sex has only ever been a manual act for him, and in fact, he doesn't do it very often because it is too much for him to be close to a woman, even to get his pleasure. So he usually is taking care of himself. And one of their, like, first interactions is her accidentally bumping into him, and she's heard that he doesn't like to be touched. She doesn't want to piss off the CEO, and she bumps into him, and he, like, grabs her to steady her. And from her point of view, she's like, oh no, he's gonna be so upset that he, like, touched me. And in his POV, he almost doesn't even register it immediately that he isn't having the same reaction to touching her as he does to other people. And that kind of trope, y'all, that kind of trope just does things to me. So yeah, this is an age gap, office romance, slow burn, overcoming trauma. This was a completely different vibe than the first one for me, and it was a 5-star book for me. Whereas this one, I gave it a 4-star, but it was less than that for me. But I just didn't want to, like, be a huge party pooper with it, because there is a lot of positives that go along with this book. Like, I can see why it was wacky and fun, but that hero just, like, did not work for me at all. And this hero, it totally does. It totally works. And again, this one's like a slow burn, and there's this beautiful longing between the two of them because they both know it's a little forbidden. And then when something horrible happens to her, i.e. the sexual assault that I mentioned, he just becomes this, like, feral warrior to protect her. And I love that shit. I love that shit, okay? Pretty much all of my favorite Mafia romances that I love, they have that kind of a thing in them. So anyway, this was a marvelous readathon. Absolutely loved seeing all of you who tried Mafia for the first time, who read some of my favorite books. You know, I saw some of my favorite books show up again and again, and it makes my heart so happy. And for me, yeah, the first couple days might not have been great, but either way, I cleaned out I cleaned out 3 or 4 Mafia off of my, you know, forever extending TBR. I definitely found a new author to watch, so that's great. Like, I definitely will check out a few more of hers. And I reread a, you know, favorite author. So it was a good time for me. So yeah, thank you so much for watching this. Make sure you subscribe to my channel. If if this was your first dive into Mafia, I have an entire, like, playlist of dark romance and Mafia videos. I have 15 to 20 videos just recommending different Mafia tropes, so definitely check those out. And yeah, I will see you for the next video here. Have a great day. Bye.